everybody. Welcome back to the Resleevables 4th edition. I'm your host, Cedric Phillips, at Cedric A. Phillips on Twitter, and I am joined by... what's a card in 4th edition that you would like? Is there anything?
All of them. I don't know, all of them.
All right, 4th edition's biggest fan, Patrick Sullivan at Basic Mountain on Twitter. Patrick, hold him up, baby. We got 4th edition packs already for our Cracker pack that'll be coming a little bit later after this episode. I guess what I would say is that this is an attempt to fix the previous core sets. Does that sound correct?
I think that's a fair interpretation.
Okay.
Revise gives off the feel of, okay, the game's really, really popular. We need to get more of this out the door. And also some of the cards in Alpha Beta Unlimited are pretty clearly not sustainable things to balance the game around, especially with the game becoming so popular and people demanding more cards. It's not really functional for everyone to have Ancestral Recall and Black Lotus in all of their decks. Can't do that.
That's definitely true.
There is some curation, but it feels more like a product meant to service secondary market needs and a growing player base rather than a curated, starter set experience.
Okay.
4th edition, I would say, due to its size, due to more thoughtful and judicious addition and removal of certain cards, really is the first core set.
I would agree with that.
Now, Magic has kind of had an on-again, off-again history with core sets over the years. Sometimes it was a very big part of the yearly releases. Now it's way less of a thing.
Yep.
But at this point in time, this was a huge set.
Yep.
There's actually structure to the rarities in the set that appears for the first time. And again, some very... you can agree or disagree with some of the individual choices, but very thoughtful curation about what cards are going in here. What does a sustainable standard type 2 sort of format look like?
Type 2.
And what are the types of cards that we want to get into more players' hands that, due to the relative shortage of print runs in Arabian Nights, Antiquities, The Dark, and so forth, were generally absent from relatively new players' collections.
Now, you, of course, were playing during this time, as you've mentioned on many episodes previously. And, we've made jokes about Fallen Empires. Now you couldn't give that stuff away. And now with this set, there's, spoiler alert, the dual lands aren't in this set, and some of the Power 9, I think it's all gone too.
It was gone and revised.
Okay. Yeah. So, so it's gone. Right. But like those cards that were obviously the most powerful cards, well, we know that they are now, and they were also very powerful then. I imagine like when this kind of comes out, people are pretty excited about it. Don't really know what's going to be going on in it. But the idea of like these cards that like are so difficult to get, they're basically just throwing them into the ecosystem of like, you can finally get not all the cards that you want because of, the dual lands and stuff like that, but you can get a lot more of the cards that you want and maybe more importantly, need to build your decks.
Yeah. So if you go back to the revised episode, there was a sense among established players who had been around since the beginning, or at least since Unlimited, that there was really no purpose in buying revised because they already had all the cards. And on top of that, a lot of the most powerful, most desirable cards were removed from revised.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is the point in my Magic experience where I kind of had that version of that with 4th edition.
Okay.
Insofar as I was already an established player, not in a competitive sense, but I kind of knew what was going on. I had a fairly substantial collection. And this set came out. It was a lot of reprints. Now, some of them were reprints I didn't have access to.
Okay.
But there was a certain element of, well, what is the point of me buying this set? Now, ultimately, as a player, I did end up buying a fair bit of it. We can talk about some of the things that were made more available over time because of 4th edition.
Okay.
But it's sort of interesting as a retrospective of being kind of on the ground floor of revised and being like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And that experience of being around from Unlimited and not wanting the cards was just not part of my experience, nor was it part of any of the people, my friends who were playing at the time. 4th edition was our first taste of that experience. Of,
gotcha.
Is there enough here that's new, that's desirable, where we would continue to buy this rather than just trying to find packs of revised?
Well, we got a lot of stuff to dive into with this episode. It's not going to be our longest episode, but it is going to be pretty lengthy. So stay with us as we prepare to go over the facts of 4th edition. All right, everybody, we are here with the facts of 4th edition as we kick off this episode of the Resleevables in the same way that we always do. We got to tell you that 4th edition, it's a Magic core set. We know that, but what we didn't know is that in order to create 4th edition, 51 cards were removed from Revised. All right, so get those out of here. So you would think that maybe 51 cards would be added from other stuff. No. 122 cards were added from Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, and the Dark. Now, that's not 122 from each of those 4 sets. It's 122 cards total that are added from those 4 sets. 4th edition was the first set to have basic lands printed on a separate print sheet, which means that this freed up room on the common and uncommon card sheets to include more spells. This also allowed boosters to be packaged without lands, which I think is like a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I also think it's a mistake.
Okay, talk to me.
Well, it's just, again, as a new player starting, like that is often a bottleneck on your collection. It's just having lands, getting enough lands. I think the previous world in Revised and going back where the basic lands existed on the print sheet and you got boosters with 4, 5, 6 lands, I think that's also a mistake.
Okay.
But replacing one common with a basic land is, I think, a pretty good middle ground where people aren't inundated with a bunch of basic lands and all their boosters, but also new players get a little bit more easy access to basics.
So like nowadays, it's kind of funny, right? Because I know there's a bunch of different type of boosters, but you know, booster packs have a land in them.
Yeah.
And if you're an experienced player like myself and Patrick, or even kind of like an intermediate player, right? It's like you open the booster pack and it has a land in it. You're just like, I don't need this. But if you imagine the new player experience where they're just like, oh, a land. Now, again, lands are more readily accessible now in 2023 than they were back in 1995. But I do wonder what the new player experience is now when they're starting Magic and it's like, oh, I have a land in my pack. Like, that's kind of cool. Whereas someone like you or me, or maybe someone who's not new but intermediate, like I mentioned, might just go like, I don't need this, throw it away or put it in the side.
Well, even for more experienced players like us, I would argue a basic land is a more valuable thing to have than the average common in a set.
Okay.
Because, I don't know, you cube. You have friends over to draft. Like there is actually purpose to having basic lands, even if you're a fairly long time player, certainly relative to the average throwaway common in most sets.
It is probably more useful than we realize because I think the thing you just mentioned is actually like, I'm thinking about it right now, just the number of times I've been at a convention center where it's just like, anyone in planes and it's like, well, there's like a couple left over from the draft. I'm like, perfect.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like that just takes care of the problem.
Yeah. And it also just sort of makes sense of, the basic lands are kind of the most foundational game pieces.
Yeah.
It's weird for them to be absent. They're actually the one card that operates with its own set of rules.
That's true.
They're tagged basic. You can play any number of them. They sort of communicate at a very basic level what some of the flavor and tone of the colors are, and they should just kind of be around, in my opinion. Even setting aside the practical need for basics and it being more useful than the average common for most players, I also think the world is really weird not having basic lands. And one of the really key ways that sets communicate some of their flavor is the art on basic lands,
which they've really leaned into in the past handful of sets.
If you go back to, I think original Ravnica is a great example of this.
Okay.
Of the lands, if you sort of look at them from sort of afar, they just look, yeah, that's a plains, that's a mountain, that's a swamp. Nothing really seems that odd about them. But if you look in close, the land is sort of woven into the cityscape.
Yeah.
It is a part of the gigantic city environment that is Ravnica.
Yep.
And that sort of communication of flavor is executed really powerfully on basic lands. And there's all sorts of examples over the years of similar stuff going on. So they're useful. They're so foundational to the game that I think it's weird for them to be absent. And when they're well executed, they do a lot to convey the flavor of the world.
At the time of printing, this is a fun little note here. Wizards' policy was that core sets had white borders. Okay. But also that a card could not be put into a white bordered set without first appearing in a black bordered set in that language. All right, I'm going to repeat that because it's a little confusing. WotC's policy was that core sets had white borders. Okay. But also that a card could not be put into a white border set without first appearing in a black bordered set in that language, which kind of restricts what you can do.
It means that at this time, it means that if you have a reprint in the set and therefore it is white bordered, it means the set has to be 100% reprints.
Yes.
Because you cannot make a white bordered card appearing for the first time.
Correct. Okay. So to make 4th edition sets uniform, Renaissance sets were printed in German, Italian, and French to create black bordered versions of cards not previously available in those languages. Now, I'm going to give you fine folks a little spoiler here. We are going to be talking at length about Renaissance sets during our Chronicles episode because that's where it really comes up, but that note is important here as well. Now, these printings from these Renaissance sets meant that 4th edition cards in English, French, German, and Italian could be printed exclusively with white borders. Okay. Japanese, traditional Chinese, Korean, Spanish, and Portuguese 4th edition cards were printed with black borders. So now we're satisfying the black border aspect of things, which means they can now, since they've been printed in black bordered, they can be printed in white borders. However, after the black bordered versions were printed of those Japanese, traditional Chinese, Korean, Spanish, and Portuguese cards, the set, which is 4th edition, was almost immediately reprinted with white borders in Japanese, Spanish, and Portuguese. A copyright notice dated 1995 is printed on the bottom of the cards. There's a beveled frame missing from revised, which was restored, and the colors were also much more saturated. So this is obviously a little complicated.
Yeah.
They've basically, I guess the easiest way to put this is like they've just kind of made up a rule for the sake of making up a rule.
Well, back in the day, there was definitely some generalized sense of wanting to preserve collectability.
Okay.
That original versions were supposed to be, if not more valuable on the secondary market, at least visually demarcated in some way where you knew this was like the original printing of something.
Okay, that makes sense.
The problem with this is, among other reasons, is in theory, it's communicating something valuable. I look at a card, it has a white border. I know that that's a reprint.
Yep.
That is theoretically of some value.
Okay.
The issue that I have is that there's no way you could derive that information unless someone told you what was going on.
That's definitely true.
You would not be able to make sense of what was what or what was being communicated unless someone told you. And so for something that's ostensibly supposed to be communicating something, it is so convoluted and so like inside baseball, someone just needs to be telling you what's going on, that it really fails at what the task is supposed to be.
I would agree with that. That's a really good point of like, if you don't know, then you would never know.
Yeah. So if you fast forward, once they started introducing the rarity, black, silver, gold.
Yeah. Yep.
In Exodus, I believe was the first set that had that.
I think that's right.
You might open up a pack and not really gather what's going on the first time around. But after a while, you open up your booster and you're like, okay, so there's 11 black ones, 3 silver ones, and 1 gold one.
Sure.
Okay, this probably means rarity.
Okay.
You could start from a base of no information and probably get it pretty quickly what was going on there.
It's true.
This is impossible. It is completely divorced from anything anyone could possibly interpret. So, not great.
A couple of other notes here as far as kind of like what the cards look like. So there's a new white mana symbol that was introduced in 4th edition. I'm sure on the screen you're probably seeing the old one alongside the new one. And the new one is still used today, which is very cool. And then the other mana symbols were redesigned as well, but less noticeably so. So if we start with black, Black's skull became a bit more elongated. We move over to blue. Blue's water drop became slimmer and more symmetrical. Then we move over to red. Red's fireball lost the flame licks coming off of it. Okay. And then green's tree received different branches and a less thick base. Also, the tap symbol changed to a curved arrow symbol with a black rectangle representing the tapping of the card behind it. Mm-hmm. So as they are getting more cards in the ecosystem, trying to fix some of their problems as far as like, I want these cards, I don't have access to these cards, whatever. They're also making some slight changes to the game as well in this core set. So I kind of look at 4th edition a little bit of just kind of like like a taking inventory, and it's like, what can we fix right now? Because our game is so popular and we're clearly doing a lot of things right, but there's also some things that like maybe in the back of your head, it's like, yeah, you know, like I hate how that white mana symbol looks. Can we change it now? And it's like, well, we can't do it right now, but maybe like in a future set. And maybe they had a meeting, and obviously I don't know if they had said meeting, but maybe they had a meeting where it's like 4th edition of the set where like, if you got gripes, come on down and let's fix some of the things that like you're unhappy with that we feel like we can meaningfully change. That's not going to take up a ton of bandwidth like the mana symbols and the tap symbol.
I have some perspective on this from working on physical games. Obviously wasn't there at the time, but I have some theories on what was going on here.
Okay.
Magic explodes.
Yep.
And as someone working on the product, you still go, we kind of messed this thing up.
Sure.
You know, we don't really love the way the mana symbol works. Wouldn't it be nice if the tap symbol like actually was a more clear visual representation of what was happening instead of a sideways T, like a T at a 45-degree angle or whatever.
Sure.
But Magic is so successful that the best thing to do for the product and the game is just keep making more sets.
Keep churning it out.
Yeah. And instead of doing this piecemeal, okay, we'll change the green mana symbol in Antiquities. Okay, the dark rolls around, make a new tap symbol. Often it's sort of like, let's keep a ledger of all the things that we want to change. And then when we can come up for air a little bit, we'll do it all in one shot.
Sure.
So it wouldn't surprise me if there was sort of a laundry list of stuff that people wanted to change or improve or iterate on, but they didn't really have the bandwidth to do it. And 4th edition was sort of the line in the sand where they said, okay, we're going to, you know, sort of gather ourselves a little bit here and actually make the changes we've been talking about for the past year.
Not only that, which I agree with you, that's probably what's going on, but also it's kind of like maybe it's an indirectly announcement of just like, hey, we kind of got our heads on straight. Like we want this set to do really well because it's trying to fix a lot of problems. And also here are some changes that ideally maybe when you open your booster packs, like you're kind of excited about and notice.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of, we're trying to fix some stuff. We're aware of maybe some of the things that people have been saying or complaining about, whatever. And like, we finally have the bandwidth to fix some problems that we had as well. And so now here it all is for you.
And I think it's interesting to sort of look at the evolution of tap, right? So you start with alpha and it's just written out on the cards, tap.
Yep.
Now, tapping is so foundational to the game that it's good to come up with something shorter because over time you would like to save room on text boxes. And if you're writing out tap to blah, 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 instead of having a symbol, then that's just worse over time. You're just using up space for really no gain. So you evolve to the tap symbol, the sideways 45-degree angle T or whatever.
I always just think of it as the T.
Yeah. That's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
Insofar as you are saving text, you've come up with a symbol. Established players can jump on pretty easily and figure out what's going on. Great. You've done the thing that you wanted to do. But you wouldn't look at that T and say, well, that's definitely the ideal.
Sure.
Like that's just like sort of a quick, that's papering over the problem.
Yeah.
It's a step in the right direction, but if you were starting from scratch, it's definitely not what you would land on. And the tap symbol in 4th edition is like much better in terms of communicating to a relatively new player what is actually the thing that's going on here.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of take these small steps in the right direction, but that still, you could at the end of the day still say, well, that's not actually what we wanted to do. That was just the best thing that we could come up with in a very short time frame once we identified the problem and what the potential solution would be. A lot of what's going on in 4th edition feels like a step towards what is actually the thing we want to be doing long term and not just this sort of hodgepodge, you know, putting holes in the dam sort of piecemeal experience that you get from, let's say, unlimited to revised.
And a lot of these things are still in place today. So clearly they thought about them and what they wanted to do and then executed on them. Let's talk about the number of cards in 4th edition. 378 of them with 121 commons, 121 rares, 121 uncommons. I don't know why I did them in that order, but I did. And 15 basic lands. This is the first set to have the same number of commons, uncommons, and rares. And this practice continued for large expansion sets until the release of Mirrodin. So, any thoughts on this of like 121, 121, 121, same numbers?
I love where their heart is at here.
Okay.
I think that you need to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room and not just hard lock yourself into that. But this is closer to correct than just it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Because the rarities kind of only work in terms of, to back up, what are the goal of rarities? It's like, okay, you want the rares to be special. You want to make sure that cards that are overly complicated or maybe don't play especially well, whatever, are not saturating the new player experience, all that kind of stuff. Part of the reason to make Wrath of God rare is because it's really splashy and exciting. And part of the reason to make it rare is you don't want everyone starting with a bunch of Wrath of Gods in their deck when they're first starting out the game.
Sure.
But that experience kind of only works if you have an even distribution of the rarities, because once you start having, let's say, a ton of commons versus a much smaller tranche of uncommons, the commons and uncommons actually become functionally the same rarity.
Okay.
Well, I worked on a set once where the set was a massive amount of commons and a relatively small amount of uncommons. And I sat down and did the math one day and I was like, our commons are more rare than our uncommons are.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, not good.
Not good, yeah.
So, like I said, you want to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room just because some sets have different needs. Some cycles are going to direct you in one place or another in terms of maybe having slightly more of this rarity or slightly less of this other rarity. But I do appreciate the discipline to say, let's start from having a really tight structure. I think there is a lot to that. And I think that's sort of proven out by the fact that this was the rarity structure for large sets for almost 10 years.
Yeah, a little while.
If you're looking for 4th edition to original mirrored in, that's, we're 7-8 years. I mean, that's standing the test of time. And they still do something very close to this for most of their sets.
4th edition set symbol is the Roman numeral 4. Now, to note, that set symbol, not like the expansion symbol. So you're not going to see that on any of the cards. 4th edition, it was released in April of 1995. The print run was estimated to be 500 million cards. Now, it was a lot funnier when I said that during Fallen Empires.
Well, Fallen Empires was a considerably smaller set.
It's also true.
So if you're talking about, 500 million versus the 350, 375 million of Fallen Empires.
Yeah.
But is the average 4th edition card more rare than the average card from Fallen Empires? Absolutely, because you're comparing 100 cards to 360.
Yeah, very true. 4th edition was available from May 3rd, 1995. I know it was released in April, but these are what my notes tell me. Available from May 3rd, 1995 to well past the end of the run in April 1997 to sometime in 1998. So when I see something like that, obviously we have the running Fallen Empires thing from last episode where it's just like, this was available forever. To me, it's not, you were there, obviously, so you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I imagine this was going off the shelves fine.
Yeah, it was fine.
Wasn't flying off the shelves like the initial products were, where it's just like, and Antiquities is gone and the Dark is gone or whatever, right? But also those print runs were smaller, whatever. But this is a very large print run of 500 million cards, and though these cards are going off the shelves pretty quickly, maybe there was a little of like, ooh, Fallen Empires was bad. If I'm a store, I'm going to be maybe a little more cautious in how much I order because I got burned. Maybe there's something like that going on. There was definitely a negative perception around the brand generally in the aftermath of Fallen Empires. There is some amount of that. Okay. But let's kind of view the context here. So if you've been playing the game for a long time, it's very easy to talk yourself out of purchasing 4th edition because I already got the stuff, or I already have at least the most desirable stuff. And then even if you are a relatively new player, your 4th edition purchases are bumping up against other expansions that are coming out. Okay. So, for example, if I go to the card shop and I've got $10 to buy some packs with, like literally me as a 15 or 16-year-old, and I'm looking at 4th edition packs and Alliances boosters, well, I know the stuff in Alliances is all new. I don't have any of it. True. So there is a sort of resource cap that the players experience, where even if you desire the stuff in 4th edition, do you desire it more than the set that just came out? Yeah. That's a hard line to get over. Yep. So 4th edition move, and also there was still revised in the ecosystem, and a lot of players just said, okay, well, revised as the dual lands. So all the things being equal, I'll buy packs of those. Yep. So you add it all up, 4th edition
moved fine, certainly a step in the right direction compared to Fallen Empires, but a set like that is going to move slow because for a certain segment of the player base, they're not going to purchase it off the jump. And then even for the players who are interested in that sort of thing, assuming they're dealing with a somewhat finite budget, new sets are coming out all the time, and those sets are filled by definition with entirely new cards.
I also just thought, so you answered that question very well, which doesn't surprise me. I also just thought of like the player experience. You go into a store, what's the newest set?
Yeah.
Alliances, or, you know, like that's a question like that people will ask. Like that's a question I used to ask when I was a kid.
I worked at a card shop. We got it all the time.
Yeah, you ran Target or whatever. It's just like, what's the newest set? This one. Or what's the coolest set? And your answer is probably never going to be 4th edition.
Yeah, and when I was a lapsed player and I came back into the game, that was the question I asked. What is the newest set? And that's how I ended up purchasing packs of Urza's Legacy, because that was just the newest set that came out.
Yeah, so that makes some sense why it wasn't all the way gone. Even though the run ended in April 1997, it wasn't gone until 98. Let's talk about what these what the products were. Cards were sold in 60 card starter decks and 15 card boosters. Starter decks included 3 rares, 9 uncommons, 26 commons, and 22 lands. The package of the starter decks displayed 5 mana symbols instead of the 5 colored stones on previous versions. Now for the boosties, those included 1 rare, 3 uncommons, and 11 commons. 4th edition was the first set with booster packs with foil wrappers, and the first with artwork on the wrappers. And now we get to play our first game with my partner, Patrick. If you're ready.
Before we get into this.
Okay.
Cedric and I do a little review of the script that he writes up.
It's true.
There are questions that get asked on this. They are always on the spot.
That's true.
I never know the answers ahead of time, even if I know what the topic is going to be. And Cedric asked, do you think you could identify the art on the 4th edition boosters? Like what card is associated with it? And I immediately said, 100% not close. I'll get all of them. This is the first time I'm walking into one of these challenges where I put it on the table up front. There's no way I'm getting this wrong. Let's see how it goes.
Okay, so this is where you have the opportunity to tell me the artwork. Do you want me to tell you how many there are, or do you just feel like you know them?
I thought you were going to show me the piece of art.
No.
Oh, that's very different. I'm sorry. I thought you were going to be like, here's the piece of art.
No.
All right, tell me how many pieces of art there are.
5.
All right, hold on.
That's why I was surprised you were so confident.
No, I misinterpreted.
Oh, I knew 5. I knew you'd know the artwork if you saw it.
Brass Man.
That's 1.
Mesa Pegasus.
That's 2.
Nightmare.
No.
All right, tapping out.
All right.
I could have sworn it was.
Here's our Brass Man.
Brass Man.
So you got that.
Mana Vault.
Here's our Mana Vault. Didn't get this one. You did get Mesa Pegasus. I'm going to give you a hint for the next one. It is a red creature.
Okay.
I will not say the creature type because that'll give it away. It is a generic red creature.
Is it Mon's Goblin Raider?
It is not.
Heirloom Minotaur.
That is correct.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. All right. And I will give you a hint for the. How do I do a hint for this one? Let's see. I don't want to shuffle those in the microphone. Sorry. There's not a really good way to do a hint. Okay.
Give me the color.
White.
Oh, Balance?
No.
Armageddon?
No.
I don't know.
Okay. It is an enchant creature.
Divine Sacrament or whatever that thing is. Divine whatever.
Plus no. Spirit Link.
Spirit. Oh my God.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
Of course.
All right.
That was really painful.
I'm not going to hold this against you because you misunderstood.
I misunderstood what the game was going to be.
Right.
That's my bad.
That's all right. Little misunderstanding in the pre-show. This happens.
That is embarrassing.
Let's move on to the gift box.
Okay.
So, 4th edition was supplemented with a special gift box. We've talked about gift boxes on this show before. It included the following items: 2 starter decks, 30 glass counters, a flannel bag for storing the counters, an illustrated rule book, and a card collector's checklist. Now, I can't remember exactly. You had one of these. I can't remember what set it was from.
Revised.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And you spoke about that with a big smile. You were very happy.
It was the first Magic thing I ever got.
These products, I have to imagine these products were received well during that time.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
I mean, it was, so in terms of actually teaching someone how to play nonsense, It's like awful.
Okay.
Rule books useless, and the starter decks aren't precons. They're just piles of cards.
Yeah, sure.
But in terms of just being a visually appealing product that sort of gave you the sense that you had enough to get your feet on the ground, it was very nice in that respect.
Okay. And, this is the kind of product, too, that I can imagine if, like, a mom or dad is walking the store and it's just like, I've heard about this Magic game and I've got 2 kids. And it's like, buy one of these.
That's literally what my mom did.
Yeah. Just buy one of these and just give it to them and they'll figure it out, or their friends will show them or something. And then that satisfies like my kids need something to do. Maybe I don't want them to play video games anymore. They're tired of video games or something. It's like, here, try Magic.
It looks so. What's also nice about these things is, besides them being visually appealing, they have a bit of weight to them and a little bit of size. They make for a nice wrapped gift.
Yeah.
A lot of the, like the revised starter we have here is pretty tiny. It's like not an easy thing to open up.
Yep.
If it's wrapped up. So these are made for like very nice gift sets. And, like I mentioned in the revised episode and here, that's literally how I got started in Magic. Was my mom went to the gamekeeper and said, what's the most popular game? And the person behind the counter said Magic. And she goes, well, what do they need to kind of have enough to play?
Yep.
And she bought 2 of those.
Yeah, that makes sense. Designed and developed by, these are not separate teams. It's one and the same. Richard Garfield, Charlie Catino, Scaphalias, Don Felice, Tom Fontaine, Jim Lynn, Joel Mick, Chris Page, Dave Petty, Barry Reich, Bill Rose, and Elliot Siegel. We've heard all of those names before if you've been watching previous episodes of this show. They designed and developed 4th edition. But we have to talk about our most fun part of the facts here. Our old buddy, the person who does all the graphics on this show, the wonderful Ray Dill, who just has things I would not expect him to have, even though I've known him for almost 10 years. Now, he had the last Pocket Players Guide.
So good.
And then when I messaged him last week and I was working on the script, I was like, do you have the other Pocket Players Guide? And he's like, yeah, I'll mail it to you. Bang. Bang. My camera. Bang. Here you go. Last time you did some nice reading from that.
All right.
I'll give you a moment to leaf through. I'll go over a couple of notes here. Pocket Player's Guide for 4th edition. It was a guide to the cards and the rules of 4th edition. The previous Pocket Player's Guide is the guide and the rules of ABU and the rules of Revised. It was published in 95. The previous Pocket Player's Guide was published in 94. The contents here, I'm not going to go over all of them, but here's a couple of notes. Introduction. By Rich Redman and Eric Duhan, The World of Domina, with notes from Richard Garfield. There's Playing the Game. There's the 4th edition annotated rules by the WotC's rules team. There's glossary and notes. There's sequence of play, a quick reference guide. There's detailed attack sequence and timing and general rules. Then there's developing your deck with things from Paul Peterson and Mark Rosewater. There's multiplayer environments like Multiplayer Magic by Jim Lynn and Dave Petty, and Leagues and Drafts by Charlie Catino and Joel Mick and some others. Your favorite, the Duelist Convocation and Official Tournament Rules.
That's right.
By the DCI. There's Collector's Information by T. Brian Wagner. There's game support by Rich Redman and Eric Duhan, like an index and a customer survey and the Duelist Convocation membership form. So, look, I don't know if this came with anything or if you bought this by itself, but they have another one, and I think it might fit in your pocket. Maybe it looks like a little big for your pocket. But actually, we were joking about this, Ray and I, because it was like, well, back then, this is when they had like the flared pockets with like the big jeans. I think maybe Janko jeans. I don't know.
Definitely.
But it's like, yeah, you can jam that in there because those pockets are huge.
All right. So I'm in the Duelist Convocation section.
Not a surprise. You may read to us if you'd like.
So this is going over the tournament rules at the time.
Okay.
I'm going to skip to numeral 6.
Okay.
Players are not required to wager ante during the tournament.
That's nice.
Players may play for real ante, provided that both participants in the match give their consent, though this agreement does not allow the inclusion of banned ante cards in the tournament deck.
Wait, hold on. So you could play for ante in a tournament if you agreed to it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's just, it's the same thing as like, yeah, you want to play for $50? Sure. Oh, yeah.
Sure. Okay.
All right. Ante cards won in a tournament must be kept separate from the tournament deck and sideboard and may not be used in the tournament in any capacity. If loss of ante cards from a player's deck reduces the deck below 60 cards, the player no longer has a legal tournament deck and will be removed from the tournament.
Give him the hook. Get them right out of here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a section in here that's like, yeah, it's legal to gamble. And if your deck is rendered illegal after you lose the gamble, you're kicked out.
Out. Let me see this real quick.
Yeah.
See the price in the back? Oh yeah. I'm gonna show this here. $7.95 right there. Bang. Pretty cheap. Oh, actually, excuse me. That's the special introductory price.
Okay. Well, I mean, seems like there's something nice in here where they're going through all the cards in 4th edition and telling you how older versions of the card look different.
Okay.
So that's a nice little thing. Like,
Okay,
yeah, if you're running the old cards, here's how they work. That's nice. The tournament rules are hilarious because many of these things are literally the opposite of what modern day tournament rules are.
Sure.
There's some speaking here to, there's combos.
Ooh, I like those. Okay.
All right. Channel plus fireball. Okay.
There's a website based off of that.
Thicket basilisk plus lure. Great.
All your stuff's dead.
Fire breathing, and then in parentheses, or inflatable creature plus dwarven warriors. Now we're starting to get a little sketchy.
Okay.
Because it's one of those things where it's like make target creature with power 2 or less unblockable.
Okay.
So you're like make it unblockable, attack, fire breathing.
Fire breathing. Okay, sure.
Colossus of Sardia plus instill energy.
Oh, that's a way to untap it.
That's great.
Okay.
Flight in parentheses or jump plus grape shot catapult in parentheses hurricane. Send them up, shoot them down.
Okay, I like that.
Pestilence plus circle of protection black or plus black ward or regenerating creature. That's great.
That means you need a lot of mana.
Gloom plus sleight of mind.
Okay.
Red/blue elemental blast plus chaos lace / thought lace seems way worse than just playing with counterspell.
Yes.
So this is an anti-combo that's being called a combo.
All right.
Which is the rack plus black vice.
That's not.
Those are just 2 cards that don't work well together.
Just 2 cards that have text.
They can also just have 4 cards in their hand.
That's right. Okay.
Stasis plus time elemental plus kismet in parentheses plus burst of paradise plus instill energy.
Oh, okay, well that's 5 cards.
Yeah,
that's 5 cards.
It's 5 cards that involve an 0-2, an 0-1, and a creature enchantment.
Okay.
Anyway, great stuff in here. I love going through these books.
These books are great because this is a bygone era. They would never make this now, or at least I'm pretty sure they wouldn't, because this is what the internet is for. We don't need this anymore.
The rack plus black vice. Well, one of them's got to work.
Put them in the squeeze.
Yeah, they're in the squeeze. And it's also like, not only is that not powerful, it's not true.
Yeah.
You can just have 4 cards in your hand.
It's a literal use of the word combo.
Yeah.
Those are the facts of 4th edition. Now, normally this is where we move on to flavor and lore and storyline. It's a core set. We ain't got any of that. So then we would normally move on to mechanics, but it's a core set and we just got a bunch of reprints, so we ain't got any of that. So as you can probably see on the bottom bar on the screen, we are moving to cycles of 4th edition right after this. All right, everybody, we are back for our 4th edition cycles, which you all know I love going over the cycles of the sets. Now, because it is a core set and it's full of reprints, you're probably going to figure out very quickly that if you've watched previous episodes, we've gone over these cycles before. But some cycles are back and some cycles are not. So we're going to go over the 5 cycles that 4th edition does have, starting with the Circle of Protections. Each of these common white enchantments has a mana cost of 1 and a white and the ability to prevent the damage from a source of a given color for a single colorless mana. Circle Protection, white, blue, black, red, and green. Remember that Circle Protection black was accidentally not printed in alpha. Now, this does beg the question of, why do we need to do this again? But I can't believe I'm saying this, but like, it's a different time, it's a different era of Magic, and they just like having these things around.
To me, it's not about being a color hoser, because if you were doing the color hosing thing, if you were doing the enemy color things, you would only print circle red and circle black.
Yeah.
What I'm assuming is going on here is the idea of preventing damage is seen as so definitional to white's color pie that they're willing to give these things a pass.
Yeah.
That's awful, because these are horrendous, and having them ubiquitous and at low rarity is like literally one of the early exit points for novice Magic players at this time is just getting locked out by the circles.
Look, I'm hyper competitive. You know that. I love destroying my opponents anytime I play them. I've cast circles before, and just the feeling of helplessness for my opponent is just like, look, even for me, this is a bit much.
There is a difference between this is really powerful and the game feels bugged.
Yeah.
To me, the circles well encroach into the space of this feels like I don't believe the game works this way.
Yeah.
This has got to be a typo. It's got to be a misprint. We have to understand the rules incorrectly, something, because there's no way you just cast this and then play lands and I'm dead.
Yeah, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Like Force Natures, single mana, bang, doesn't do anything. And it's like, well, shouldn't it be like pay 1 to prevent each 1 damage from it? No, it just prevents it all.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, it's not a very fun experience.
Does it work on any sorts of damage? Does it work on either turn? It's just like,
yes.
This just seems like this can't possibly be true.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they wanted these things to be prevalent. And I assure you they were.
Yeah, I was going to say they had to be. I think you bring up a really good point there, too, that this is effectively White's color identity. And I think mentioning that is important because over the past handful of years, they have tried to carve out, I guess I'll say, a new identity for White. You know, Gavin Verhey has talked about this, and others have talked about this at Wizards of the Coast of White's identity isn't great compared to the other colors, and we'd like to try to figure something out. But this was that identity then, like Patrick mentioned, and not ideal. So.
Yeah, it's also just really weird to be like, okay, so we're going to do all the circle protections and another white colorless enchantment soft lock in Island Sanctuary. Like, do we really need all of these?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Someone thought yes. And this is not the last set that the circles appear in either.
No, it's
We
not.
are not done with these by a long shot.
We got laces. Those are back. Each of these rare instances permanently change the color of a permanent. Pure lace, thought lace, death lace, chaos lace, and life lace are back. This was a thing during this era of Magic 2 in the same way that the circles were really, which is they were really into changing the color of stuff back in the day.
This is another one where I feel like one design is really sweet and doing 5 is waste of space, nonsense, and actually makes it less definitional overall.
Yeah.
You're just referencing words because you can. And even novice players pretty quickly identified these as being very weak.
Yep.
Another kind of, it's not the end of the world, but Magic would have been better served getting away from the 5 of these sooner.
Sure. Lucky Charms, which I'm always a fan of.
Dope.
Each of these uncommon artifacts is a triggered ability that allows the controller to pay 1 colorless to gain 1 life when a spell of a given color resolves. Ivory Cup, Crystal Rod, Throne of Bone, Iron Star, Wooden Sphere. Those are the 5. We've seen them before. I'm glad we're seeing them again.
I love these designs. They're really simple, really appealing. And something that I appreciate about these are that you can, again, these are quite weak. So we're talking about kind of novice player experience, but you can play Wooden Sphere in your deck with green cards or play Wooden Sphere against your friend's deck that's playing green. Works in either way.
Yep.
And it's kind of nice to have, the sideboard cards that are a blend of I'm building around this potentially, or I'm playing it because I know you're going to fall into it, and neither path is right or wrong, just works how it works.
No. Let's go to the mana batteries. All right. Uncommon artifacts with a casting cost of 4 colorless mana and the 2 activated abilities. One of them is 2 colorless mana and tap the mana battery to put a charge counter on it. And then there's also tap, remove any number of charge counters from the mana battery to add mana to your mana pool of the color. So there's 5 of them, pretty simple. White mana battery, blue, black, red, and green mana battery. These originally were in,
I believe, Legends.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. They're back here. These were fun, maybe.
It's okay. I mean, it's sort of like, why do we need to do 5? I know it's weird just to do 1.
But 5 is the easy way to go.
I think a design that's just, if you could go back in time and you just make the card mana battery and you remove the counters to make any combination of colors or pick a color, remove and get that much of that, would be a way better world than having 5 mana batteries.
Okay.
Because really when you're getting to the point where you're sitting there doing nothing and just charging up your mana battery, it usually doesn't matter what color of mana battery you're tapping for. Like, you have all the mana in the world and you're probably doing some sort of X spell. So making 5 and leaning into the fact that they all produce a different color of mana is just not, again, it's just not very slot efficient. I think 1 mana battery could be really, really sweet. 5 is just, it's a lot of that note.
Last cycle, the wards, our favorite around here. Uncommon white auras with enchant creature that grants protection from a color. White ward works in this set, just so you know. Fixed. People can see it on the screen. Blue, black, red, and green ward. Okay, these are generic, not particularly good, but does what it does.
Yeah. And I'm not a huge fan of the fact that you're sort of doubling down on white cycles of punishing all 5 colors.
Yeah, the circle protections and the wards.
Yeah, that's again, it's just kind of a lot of the same note.
That's white's color identity then.
Yeah, well, I actually kind of like the wards. The wards are sweet.
Okay.
And they have like moments of being good against the right people without being super lockouty. I guess this is more a critique of the circles, but all 10 of those cards is just like, it's a lot of that.
You know what I would bet? And I just thought of this right now, and so words are coming out. I wonder if they were inspired by like video games at the time where like whatever the equivalent of like white would be in a video game was like a priest giving protection from like a color or something. And they're just like, we're going to do that in our game.
Oh, definitely. Right? I think a lot of this is about the tone of white. And if you remove the dark from the equation, which is kind of its own thing, there is a lot of, like clerics and priests and knights. It is kind of tapping into a, I've mentioned this before, but sort of a lawful good D&D trope. Yeah. And the wards and the circles are definitely that too. Like it's easy to understand how you would get from the first thing to this.
Yep.
It's just the circles play really badly, and 10 cards is, we're talking about, 3% of the set being this.
Yeah.
It's just a lot. Some editing would be good here, but I think that's mostly about the circles and not the wards.
Speaking of editing, great transition. He didn't know that he did. There are 15 mirrored pairs.
Okay.
So we're going to play our game. Now, do you know how this game works?
Mirrored pairs?
Yes.
There are typically what a mirror pair means is there are 2 cards that are intentionally supposed to be similar or sort of mirror images of each other. And Cedric gives me one of the cards. I'm supposed to guess the other one.
All right. He's got that one. No excuses. You've done well in this in the past, especially around the core sets. Now, to my wonderful editor, John, leave this in the episode. Let's get a counter on the screen.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's throw a counter on here too. Now, there are 15. Can Patrick get all 15? We're going to find out right now. Crusade.
Bad Moon.
1 for 1. White Knight.
Black Knight.
2 for 2. Blue Elemental Blast.
Red Elemental Blast.
3 for 3. Death Grip.
Life Tap? Life Force?
I don't know. Which one is it?
Life Force?
That is correct. 4 for 4. Holy Strength.
Unholy Strength.
5 for 5. Lord of Atlantis.
Goblin King.
6 for 6. Mons Goblin Raiders.
Merfolk of the Pearl Trident.
That is, I think that's 7. Sarah Angel.
Singer Vampire.
8. Wall of Water.
Wall of Fire.
Correct again. I think that's 9. Banalish Hero.
Timberwolves.
10. All right. You get nervous?
No. Are you?
Castle.
Wow.
This one's tripped him up before.
Castle. Orcish Oriflame.
All right, 11. Earthquake.
Hurricane.
12. 3 to go. Tsunami.
Flash Fires.
That's 13. Okay. All right. I'm scared for you. Feedback.
Wanderlust.
14. All right, last one. Wall of Bone.
Wall of Brambles.
Bang!
Flawless victory.
That's all 15. That is all. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. I didn't think you were going to get feedback. That was the one I was scared of.
Yeah.
But I think that was in a previous episode. I think you got it wrong then.
It sort of rings a bell.
Yeah, I think you got it wrong then, but you got it right here. Those are the 15 pairs that are in 4th edition. That's it for our cycles. Patrick is batting 1,000 right now, but don't worry, I got more games to play with him in this episode. We're moving on. Misprints, trivia, that whole thing is coming up next. We have a very fun fact about some different 4th edition cards right after this short break. All right, everybody, we are back with the Misprints trivia area of the show. Sometimes we break these up, sometimes we keep them together. It is very set dependent. Now, this episode here for 4th edition, we got a little something different going on because we don't really have many misprints and we don't have much trivia here at all. But what we do have is a unique product to 4th edition called alternate 4th edition. Are you familiar?
Vaguely. I would say that this section is less misprints and more printings that are misleading.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Should we put that on the bottom bar? Does that fit? Does that fit in there? Not really sure. Alternate 4th edition is a unique print run of 4th edition. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it is believed that this is likely the first attempt to produce Magic cards within the United States. Sometimes this product has been confused with Summer Magic, which was a version of Revised that it should not be confused with. It is similar in some ways, but occurred at different times by different companies and in different sets. So, like I said, should not be confused. The existence of these cards was discovered by former Pro Tour player Dan Bach and brought to public attention in an article posted to MTG News, which is a website I used to go to when I was growing up, on June 24th, 2002. If memory serves, I checked to see if MTG News is still a thing, and I do not believe that it is.
Yeah.
But I used to hang out there in the forums a lot. I wasn't a poster. I was just they call him like a lurker.
Yeah.
I like to say I was a reader. I just like to read things.
This is a generation gap too. I was a dojo lurker.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. So no post, just read?
I think I posted one thing once.
Sure.
But I wasn't sure if I successfully posted it.
Okay.
And then I was too embarrassed by it. Okay. So I just tried to act like it never happened.
Beautiful.
But if you go through the archives of the dojo, if somehow it still exists, you might find a post from 16 or 17-year-old me.
Okay.
Maybe.
Perfect. The cards were printed after November 20th, 1995, apparently by the United States Playing Cards Company in Cincinnati, Ohio. The USPCC, which is going to be the abbreviation here, also printed the re-release of Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, a Wizards of the Coast card game, in October 1995, and the first expansion of that game, Dark Sovereigns, in November 1995. Did you ever play this game or have any recollection?
I do recall it.
Okay.
And I think that it got re-released or rebooted at some point in the 2000s.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, there were some of the goth kids at the store kind of played it or whatever.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I had never played myself.
Okay. It is unknown if the alternate 4th edition cards represent a test printing by the USPCC to gain business with Wizards, a limited emergency print run to meet demand at the time, or a full parallel print run intended for the mass market, which is a little interesting to me because if you remember earlier in the show, we had mentioned during the facts section that they printed 500 million of these cards and then they stuck around on shelves for a while. So of those things, if I had to maybe try to debunk one or something, it seems like an emergency printing seems the least likely, but who knows?
Right. Unless there was some localized United States specific issue with the print run such that they needed to not wait for it to get over from Europe. That doesn't make much sense to me.
Due to the unknown circumstances, the companies ended their business relationship in 1996 after a closed settlement was made in cooperation with the American Arbitration Association. The USPCC 4th edition cards were apparently scheduled for destruction, but a large number of unopened packs, all starters apparently, have been found in locations around the world, though most often in the U.S. Midwest region, which would make sense because they were located in Cincinnati. Individual cards, being almost indistinguishable from normal ones, have often been found mixed in with collections, card store stock, and trade binders. Now, these cards They look extremely similar to standard 4th edition cards in normal light. And what we're going to do here is we're going to play some videos here from Dan Bach. There are some videos that are found on like YouTube with basically a black light going over them. So you guys can check those out while I do a little bit of reading here, perhaps. The USPCC versions often seem more vividly colored. The cardstock is a bit different and features a glossier finish. The USPCC cards tend to have a strange wear pattern and that develop more edge whitening than normal cards. And a special coating was applied to these cards by the USPCC, which protects the colors from fading in sunlight. This coating also causes the cards to stay dark under strong ultraviolet light, better known as a black light. The only starter decks of alternate 4th edition have appeared in circulation via unknown means. They're packaged the same as standard 4th edition, English 4th edition, except that the legal text refers to the USPCC, and they have different ISBN. In terms of the outer wrapping of a starter deck box, this one in circular in 2 of the sides, while the alternate versions is a full complete seal all around, and the alternate starter decks have no inner seal when you remove them from the box, contrary to the normal version. All of that to say this. Apparently, some company printed some 4th edition cards. It didn't go particularly well. And I did some digging on this on like various websites that sell cards. And it's like, yeah, like if you go to Star City Games and you like go into their like library of stuff, there is a thing you can click that says like alternate 4th edition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's 4th edition, there's 4th edition Black Border, and then there's alternate 4th edition. And it's like, these cards are not more expensive. They're not like, oh man, we got to get these. These are super rare or anything like we see with Summer Magic or anything like that. It's just like, yeah, this is the thing that happened and no one, I don't want to say no one cares, but it's not that they're like, this isn't sought after.
Right. If you look at Summer Magic, it's like the story behind it is there's this emergency, you know, trying to fix some errors. And then there were different errors and we destroyed it. And some of it got out. And there's a couple of things like Blue Hurricane and Serendip Ifrit with the right artwork that are sort of iconic staples of Summer Magic. This is like, yeah, there was a company in Cincinnati that made some 4th edition and the cards were like slightly worse than the ones that were made in Europe. So they kind of got rid of it. And you can tell because there's like some weird gloss on it. Yeah. It just doesn't have the same sort of sense of mystery and uniqueness that Summer Magic has.
Yeah, like not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. It's just like, this is a thing that happened, which I didn't know this happened, by the way, until I did the research for this show. It's like, this is a thing that happened. Maybe you care, maybe you don't. Are the cards more expensive? No.
Yeah.
No, they're not. It doesn't mean like 4th edition has bad cards in it. There are plenty of good cards in the set, but it's like no one is running out the door. And for people who are listening to this, this might be your first time hearing about this as well, which goes to show you, I think in some respects, like if this is your first time, like it was for me, it's kind of like, I don't know, who cares?
I mean, you know me, I'm something of a historian about the early stuff. And I knew of alternate 4th edition. Like I have heard that term before. I've gone to vendors' websites that have that as a category, like Star City Games. But in terms of, did I know the history or if they were more desirable or not, or if there were errors associated with it, whatever, couldn't tell you the first thing. Yeah. This is news to me too.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. And for sake of being complete in the episode, I thought it was worth talking about, but is it a big deal? No, it's not. But perhaps you learned something today. So with that, our misprint trivia, what did you want to put on the bottom?
Printings that are misleading.
Those are all done now. And we are going to go to some changes that took place here in 4th edition. So, like some cards left, some cards came in. We had some rarity shifts. We're going to go over a decent amount of that stuff right after this. All right, everybody, we are back for the changes that took place in 4th edition. Now, changes is a very general term. What do I mean by that? Well, let me tell you, there were 122 cards from 4th edition that were not printed and revised. And to my editor, John, I'm going to say all 122 right now. I'm not going to do that. That would be very mean. What I'm going to do instead is say a couple of these. So again, 122 cards from 4th edition that were not printed in revised. I don't know. Ball Lightning. There's one.
Yeah.
How about that? Yeah, that's one of your favorite cards.
Fun.
I know that. It's fun. Felwar Stone.
Sweet.
Okay, cool. Greed. Cool.
Sure.
Mana Clash. Cool. Some mana batteries. Shapeshifter.
I believe Erg Readers is another banger.
Let's see if you're right about that. Do you know 122? I got Elven Raiders. I don't have Erg Raiders here. I don't think so. How do you spell Erg Raiders? Is that ERG?
ERG.
I don't got that on my list.
Erg Raiders wasn't in 4th? It was in revised. That's right. It got cut.
There you go. I
guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Look,
whatever.
there's a lot of cards here that, again, 122 cards from 4th edition were not printed in revised. Now, I got another list here for you. I got 50 cards from revised that did not get printed in 4th edition. Now, these ones might sound a little more familiar. Badlands, Bayou, Brain Geyser, Demonic Attorney, Demonic Hordes, Demonic Tutor. Your boy Farmstead.
Finally.
Yeah.
I think our players have enough of it.
Yeah.
I think everyone who wants Farmstead can get them now. We can cut it.
Fast Bond, Curd Ape, Plateau, Rock Hydra, Savannah, Scrubland, Sedge Troll, Soul Ring, thank goodness, Taiga, Tropical Island, Tundra, Underground Sea, Vesuvian Doppelganger. You'll probably notice some of the cards that I said there are dual lands.
Mm-hmm.
Those cards that I've mentioned, 50 cards from revised, did not get printed in 4th edition. And this is probably for the best because, as you probably noticed, I said the dual lands, but also just some very powerful cards.
Yeah, and also a weird allotment of just like weak cards that are fun but suck, like Rock Hydra, Vesuvian Doppelganger.
Yeah, get out of here.
I don't know, whatever. You can definitely see something of a trend here of removing some of the sort of systemic power level outliers that are hard to balance a game around.
Yeah.
Fast Bond, Soul Ring. The dual lands are a conversation unto themselves, but you can lump Demonic Tutor on that list.
Yep.
There are some, it's not quite as extreme as going from Moxes to no Moxes. These cards aren't nearly as difficult to balance the game around as those cards were, but it is another nod to like, we can't really do this forever. We got to get rid of these.
We have to make, again, like we said kind of at the beginning, this set feels like we can finally correct some errors that we wanted to correct.
Yeah.
Right. That's really what 4th edition feels like. Now, I also have this very lengthy list of cards that had rarity shifts from their last printing to 4th edition. What I'll note here is the blue mana batteries were uncommons and legends, and now they're rare. That feel like a rare cycle to you?
No, I mean, this is another, if you had one, sure.
Okay.
5 is just really weird.
Okay.
Well, I think a lot of what the rarity shifting was, I'm sure some of it was just, yeah, we want this to be an uncommon. We want this to be a rare, whatever, that sort of stuff. But also, it's a set made up entirely out of reprints.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the earlier sets don't even have the notion of rare to begin with. And the set is striving to have equal numbers of commons, uncommons, and rares.
See, that's the big one for me.
You can't actually hit that target unless you're willing to do some juggling.
That's the big one for me is I feel like once they made the decision of we want to do 121, 121, 121, they were like, okay, well, how are we going to get there? We got to do rarity shifts.
I don't know. If you looked at the sets that 4th edition pulled from, the reprint sets, I'm not even sure if there would be 121 available rares. Like
Sure.
you need to be doing something.
Yeah. So the mana batters, like I mentioned, they went from uncommon to rare. Killer Bees was a rare in Legends. Now it's an uncommon.
Oh yeah.
Okay. That's a card we know. Land Tax was an uncommon in Legends. It was a rare in this set, which is probably good. Mishra's Factory was a rare in Antiquities. It's an uncommon in this set.
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. I don't think I care about that one. Sylvan Library was an uncommon in Legends, and now it's a rare. That card feels like it's a rare.
Yeah, it's a little complicated. It's a little outside of Green's color pie. Like paying life to draw cards is very much a black thing. And sometimes the way that you can communicate color pie is through frequency. Yeah. And yeah, sometimes the rares are kind of exceptions to the rules as a way to get that across. And I think through that lens, Sylvan Library is easily a rare.
There's probably, I mentioned the big point for me is the trying to fit everything in the 121 times 3 box. But there, one thing you do get to do here is you get to go, I think we got the rarity wrong on that card last time. And so like Sylvan Library, it reads to me like a rare. It plays like a rare. But maybe this was an opportunity for them to just go like, should have been a rare, shouldn't have been an uncommon. We can fix this now.
There's some of that also. I think specifically with the cards that came from Legends, there's so much pressure on the rare slot to be Legends, Enchant Worlds, like the mechanics of the set already sort of speak to Rare being the place where those cards are going to go. And so a card like Sylvan Library, which is not really about anything in particular, it's just a random design in the set, a lot of those types of cards are going to end up in uncommon in a set like Legends because the rares are so, like, the set's about what's going on here. Once you're outside of Legends, I think Sylvan Library is very clearly a rare for power level and color pie bleeding and rules weirdness, all of it. Yeah. And so it's a no-brainer to move it up.
Now, those are my notes. I know you want to touch a little bit on dual land conversation, maybe.
Yeah.
So where do you want to dive in here?
Well, we talked a lot about in the Unlimited and the revised sets about, removing the Power 9, removing a lot of the power level outliers from Alpha Beta Unlimited.
Yep.
And the dual lands are an interesting case because you could argue that they are quote unquote too good. Especially back in this era when there really was very little that punished non-basic lands specifically.
Okay.
So there was very little opportunity cost.
There's no Wasteland, Dust Bowl, any of that stuff. Right?
Yeah.
There's Strip Mine, obviously, but that punishes all lands.
Yeah. It's Blood Moon's pretty much the only thing that exists at the time that's really punishing these things.
Okay.
So on one hand, you can definitely argue these things are quote unquote too good, but you could also argue, unlike the Moxes and Black Lotus and Ancestral Recall, Time Walk, those cards, they're not really ruining anyone's time.
Okay.
The game is not, if I have a bunch of Ancestrals and Time Walks and Power in my deck and you just started playing, that's going to make your experience bad. If I have some Tundras in my blue-white deck, you probably don't even notice. It's just whatever.
Yeah.
So what is the case for removing the dual lands? Why would you bundle them into the sustainable power level sort of rubric for removing other cards that came before that? And I would argue that it is interesting and noteworthy that from Arabian Nights through Fallen Empires, so all the expansions that have come out, there is not a single 2-color dual land. You have a couple of 5-color lands, Insidia Brass and Rainbow Veil.
Okay.
That's it. There's no, this is before Underground River. This is before
that comes to the next set.
This is before Bad River. This is before Lava Tubes.
Yep.
You name it. And I can imagine that the tiebreaker is just being like, we want to make more dual lands. There's really fertile design space here. And the original dual lands absorb too much of that design space. If someone wanted to make the argument that they were also just too powerful and not the thing they wanted to balance the game around, I think that's reasonable too. I think arguing the other side is also reasonable. But I think this is a combination of power level and design space. And it's not lost on me that there were no 2-color dual lands from Arabian Nights to Fallen Empires. And then after 4th edition, you start seeing a ton of different cycles of 2 and 3-color lands and getting a little bit of breathing space to make cards that are worse, but still have purpose, still something to think about, I think is a really good decision. And that still informs Magic design today.
That's what I was going to say. It informs Magic design, and it also informs the consumer experience, because what is one of the things that everybody does when a new set comes out? What are the lands?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what's the new land cycle going to be? And now some sets, there is no new land cycle. And there are sets where it's like, oh, well, they brought these back. Or there are times, of course, and I think this was I don't know who thought of this decision, but I think it's a very smart decision where they're like, hey, this set has like 3 of the land cycle, right? Like if you remember, like when the original Ravnica came out, and it was just like, here's a couple of the guilds. Now this is part of a block, so you already know that they're coming. You don't know what order they're coming in, but you have something to look forward to. And of course, there were people who were like, I can't wait till my deck gets Blood Crypt. I hope that comes out in Guild Pack. And it's like, well, actually, it's going to come out in the 3rd set Dissension, but it is coming eventually.
And I think Magic is just a much richer game for, there's Copperline Gorge and Carplusian Forest and Raging Ravine and Wooded Foothills and Gruel Turf and don't Stomping Grounds.
Firelit Thicket, baby.
Firelit Thicket. Yeah. Another certified banger. Up and down the list, there's dozens of these red-green dual lands that have upsides and downsides and some synergies and some things they don't work well with. And you really don't get to enjoy that when Taiga is on top of everything.
Yeah.
Because once you accept we're not getting Taiga anymore, whatever duel you're going to get is going to be some, if not strictly worse, at least more complicated. Then you can really appreciate, well, what's the pros and cons of this one versus that one? And opening up that design space and opening up the ability for players to appreciate and consider different options is a really powerful argument for removing the dual lands from Magic at this point, even though they are not as obviously egregious as Black Lotus or Mox Sapphire.
See, and what I think is kind of compelling about this aspect of the show right now is, again, we've already talked about how it feels like 4th edition is trying to correct a lot of problems, right? That's what this set feels like. Is it feels like, you know, and remember, the design development team is very large for this set. It is, scrolling up here really quickly, it is a lot of people. Again, Richard Garfield, and then like all these people we've mentioned in the show. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 12 people on this, right? Some sets that we've gone over, it was just like Scaff and like 3 other guys, right? This is 12 people that are sitting down, in my opinion, with intention of saying, look, clearly our game is good.
Yeah.
You know, and we've made some mistakes along the way, looking at you, Fallen Empires, but we gotta get this ship back where it needs to be. And this is our chance now that you mentioned like the bandwidth and everything else of like, I imagine all these people sitting in a conference room and being like, what are things that are grinding your gears? What are things that have been grinding our customers' gears that we can finally fix? And one of them, I have to imagine this conversation was had, is just like, hey, the dual lands are just kind of like overshadowing everything. They're so good. Everybody wants them all. And if we continue to print these, not only is it going to ruin like any design space for other lands, but it's just kind of like it's just going to be like, okay, well, my deck starts here and then I'll figure out the rest. And you don't get the conversation like you mentioned of like, do I want to play Copperline Gorge? Do I want to play Stomping Ground? Maybe I'm going to play 4 Gorge, 1 Stomping Ground. Or maybe I'm going to play 4 Stomping Ground, like 2 Gorge, because I think the games are going to play a certain way. If they, I'll never get an answer to this question, but like, if let's say they had dual lands in this set, right? At what point do they stop? Right? Like if you go like, no, like there's an argument in the office and it's just like, no, we're going to keep reprinting dual lands. So they put them in 4th. They put them in 5th. Put them in 6th. At one point you just go like, we can't do this anymore.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I would hope the answer would just be sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've been talking about a lot of these dual lands that are, you know, high rarity cards and competitive staples, but it's not just about that either. If you asked me, what is Magic's biggest design flaw on an engine level? A lot of people will say something like land screw or land flood. That's very common. Yep. That is not my answer.
That's not my answer either.
My answer to what do I believe is Magic's biggest engine level flaw is it is too hard to play 2-color decks just with basic lands. Okay. The game engine is not reliable enough to allow you to play 2-color decks in a satisfying way if you're just playing with, you know, 12 islands and 12 planes in your blue-white deck.
I was going to say the Blue-Green Madness experience.
Blue-Green Madness experience.
Yeah.
And the Blue-Green Madness experience is often how new players start the game. Yeah. That's just what they have.
Yep.
So it isn't so from there, I would say the game has needs for a lot of dual lands. And it isn't just about the most powerful one too. This is also about Swiftwater Cliffs and those type of cards being commons as well in draft and in introductory products.
Okay.
And you cannot get to a spot where you can make a critical mass of anywhere from strong to modest to weak dual lands to grease the wheels on people's 2-color decks with the original dual lands on top of everything.
Yeah.
That just doesn't work.
Yep.
So the world, in my opinion, is so much better with these out of the system and releasing just a bunch of duels that are, you know, 25 to 90% as strong, rather than just leaning on these to paper over issues with Magic's game engine in perpetuity.
Yeah. I think they made the right call on this one. Those, my friends, are those are the changes that happened here. Again, not going to go over all 122 cards that were from 4th edition and not reprinted and revised because I love our editor, John, and I don't want him to send me an email that says, I don't want to do this anymore. So, John, here's to you, buddy. We are going to get ready for our final part of the show, which is the award show, right after this. All right, everybody, it is time for your favorite part of the show. I could argue our favorite part of the show. It's everybody's favorite part of the show. It is time for the award show for 4th edition. And we are going to start things off as we always do with the Oko Thief of Crowns Award for the best card in 4th edition. And you selected?
I selected Strip Mine.
You did.
I think that there's a case between this and the card you're about to name.
Yeah.
My tiebreaker here is I wanted to give the award to something that was not in revised if possible.
Okay.
And so Strip Mine it is.
All right. Strip Mine, very powerful card. My selection is Mana Vault.
Correct. Busted.
Yeah. And so, look, either one of these cards could win the award. And so this is a conversation we haven't had yet, which I'd like to have briefly, which is, what the hell are these doing here? Because it feels like they got so much right with like, we got to pull back on some of this stuff. Now, again, the circles of protection and like what is it? It's not the laces, the wards. It's kind of like white's color identity, like you mentioned. This isn't anyone's color identity. And these cards are outrageously powerful. So like, what happened?
Okay, so I'll start this off with not trying to defend Mana Vault. Okay. But if you look at Alpha, it is so overrepresented with just busted cheap artifacts that make mana.
Okay.
Black Lotus, 5 Moxes, Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Basalt Monolith. I might be even forgetting 1 or 2, whatever.
Okay. Yep.
So you go from unlimited to revised, you get rid of the Moxes, and Black Lotus, Soul Ring gets a pass for whatever reason.
Yep.
So does Basalt Monolith.
Yep.
And I think it's okay to say, what if there's one? And there's one with like, it does have a drawback.
It does.
And it's not we're talking about an era before Voltaic Key and Manifold Key. So it's not like untapping this thing is trivial. You do feel the pain of Mana Vault being hard to untap and dealing damage to you. If you're going to give any of those artifacts a pass, I think Mana Vault is the one to give it to.
All right.
And since all the other ones have been removed, is having one outlier more interesting and fun than having 0. Strip Mine to me is way more egregious.
Okay, I was gonna say I was quite literally going to say, all right, you know what? I think your case on Mana Vault, it makes sense. Even if it's wrong,
right?
It makes sense. Now defend Strip Mine.
It's not defendable.
Okay.
All right, I don't believe this. If
Sure.
I had to make the case for Strip Mine, it's too terrible for only some people to have 4 Strip Mines.
Sure.
It's like if Strip Mine is going to exist, everyone gets
Everyone
Strip
needs
Mine.
4.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
It's like the argument. It's like an argument for like every country having access to nuclear weapons. It's like it's really bad if only one country has it.
Sure.
You can argue it's also really bad if everyone has it, but there's sort of a balancing feature that goes on with it once you're at that point. Yeah, I think if you're gonna do Strip Mine, at least make it rare.
Nope.
It's just uncommon. Like it's like they really wanted people to have this.
Spoiler: it's gonna win another award in a minute.
Yeah.
All right, the Carnival of Souls Award for the worst card in the set. I'm going back to my old pal Conservator, which has won awards on previous shows. It's shown up here again in 4th edition, and it is horrible. No other notes. Patrick.
And again, in an effort to give the award to something that didn't appear in revised, that is being reprinted and added here, I'm going to give it to Erosion.
Okay.
This is like the Blue Farmstead. It's
okay.
Very hard to cast Enchantland that doesn't do anything.
Yes. Farmstead has won previous awards for you. And I thought it was going to win this one. And then I was going through the card file and I was like, oh, it's not in here.
Yeah. Someone finally was like, okay, this is a pet peeve of mine. My rare is Farmstead. Can we stop doing this?
I hope that came up in whatever theoretical meeting I'm envisioning in my head between the designers and developers of just like, I've had enough.
I want to be clear. I started playing Magic around revised. I was 14 years old. Obviously, I'd never played a game anywhere close to Magic.
Okay.
I didn't understand the rules for a pretty long time. And of course, my collection was limited. My understanding of power level, everyone who starts off new, just like doesn't really know what's going on.
Yep.
Random cards were appealing or seemed strong to me for various reasons. Farmstead never tricked me for a second. It's the only card. It's the only card in revised that I remember looking at the first time and going, nope,
Yeah, sure.
and never changing my reaction to it.
Sure.
I think I love weak cards as much as the next person, but this is just so weak and embarrassing that you can let this one go.
And they did. The Doomblade Award for the best non-rare in the set. Let's go ahead and fist bump on this one because we got the same answer.
It's Strip Mine.
It's Strip Mine. Why is it uncommon? Unclear.
Everyone's got to get them.
There are other cards that are like really good that are non-rares, like Swords of Plowshares, Counterspell, Lightning Bolt, Channel, and none of them are better than this card. None of them are.
I think I believe this is an Aaron Forsyth quote. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
But I remember it being attributed to some high up person in Magic's history and organization saying, at a certain point, a certain number of strip mines becomes funny.
Depends on the person.
One strip mine, that sucks.
Yeah.
7 strip mines in a game, that's just sort of the game we're playing.
All right, well, maybe that's why Wasteland's never leaving Legacy.
Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows? We got the Aboro Palace in the Clouds Award for fun of, one of in the set. A little harder this time around. Do you remember your answer?
No, I don't.
It's a green enchantment. You get to look at a couple of cards. You can pay 4 life.
Oh, Sylvan Library.
There you go.
Great. I played one in a bunch of decks, and it was really sweet. Part of the reason that it's in my opinion, a one of is that you really feel the sting of the second copy.
Yeah.
Like I know there's plenty of decks out there historically who've played more than one, but I had one in a lot of decks. It's fun. When I've played green mid-range decks in Legacy over the years, like there's one in my 75 just to mize around with.
Yep.
It's fun. Have a good time with it.
Yeah. In a Legacy tournament I played a couple weeks ago with your Delver deck. My opponent played a Sylvan Library, like round 7, and I force-willed it, and they played one the next turn. I was like, ooh.
That stings. Because you assume they only got the one.
I would expect them to only have the one.
Because what kind of sicko plays 2? There you go.
The second one was real good.
Oh, yeah. So you forced the first one. Yeah. The second one's going to do some real work.
Immediate force of will. My fun of one of is Balance, because I really couldn't think of anything else. I don't know if people played a lot of this cards or not.
Well, it was restricted by the time we got to this point.
Then Balance is a good answer.
Yeah.
How about that? I didn't play then. We got the Mana Confluence Award for best vintage card, cube card in the set. It is Strip Mine. This just goes to show a lesson I learned from you, which is like you can create a really, really good set, and then you can make one mistake, and it's just like kind of just ruins everything.
Your set is more often defined by the worst design than the best design.
Yes. It's just why? Why do we do this?
Yeah, I mean and also what was really rough about it was the rule book, or like the pocket player's guide.
Oh, that's where did I put it?
It was like
this little fella right here.
It was a common truism in Magic. If you were like playing to win, playing seriously, that you would play 20 lands, 20 creatures, 20 spells.
Yeah.
So people defaulted to 20, 20, 20, which is not enough mana to begin with anyway.
Yep.
And it's certainly not enough mana when people are playing with 4 copies of Strip Mine.
Okay.
So this set introduces Strip Mine and Mistress Factory.
Yep.
So everyone at the local shop who's playing 20 lands, because that's what they've been told to do, has a 2-color deck with 4 Strip Mine, 4 Factory, playing against other decks with 4 Strip Mines.
Okay.
So the local events are very much defined by no one casting spells.
Sure. Because
they don't have enough mana to begin with. They certainly don't have enough colored mana to begin with. And also it's Strip Mine world.
Yep.
It's Strip Mines all the way down.
Yep.
So I remember Eugene Harvey, again, just like a master, someone I was very lucky to get to play Magic with and go to high school with. We're sitting around the table at the card shop one day, and he goes, I was starting to think, like, what if we started playing like 21 or 22 lands and maybe cut 1 or 2 Mistress Factories for just lands that made color mana? And my reaction was like, what an idiot. 20, never cutting a factory, never cutting a strip mine.
What are you, the dumbest person I've ever met?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. No, he was right. He was right. Yep. But 20 is like Those are round numbers. That sure sounds right. You know,
see, that is one of the best like Magic experiences where you're just like, I have an idea. I'm not sure if it's right and it sounds a little radical. What do you think? And it's just like, okay, well, what's your idea? I think it might be time to have more than 20 lands in our deck. Boo! Boo! You are so dumb. You have no idea what you're talking about. I can't believe I ever lose matches to you.
Yeah, it's one of those things where yes, he's right to the extent that there's a mistake in his thinking. It's that he's not going far enough.
Yeah, you should 25 or 26.
Yeah, it's like 24 lands and 0 factories. Maybe we'll try that.
Yep.
No,
way.
It's strip mines and mistress factories.
I'm going to move on to the Pack Rat Award for the best limited card in the set. Again, this is me merely guessing. My answer is Mana Vault because there is no other fast mana in the set. Certainly not mana as fast as this, I guess I would say. And that just seems to be really powerful in my opinion. So I don't know. If I were to open one of these, I think I would take it because I get to cast something way ahead of schedule.
My answer was Swords of Plowshares. I'm not actually sure if this is the best card, but I was kind of going through the rares and I couldn't see anything that I would very obviously take over it. Easy to splash, super powerful. Most of the best cards and bombs in other people's decks are big creatures. Answering those on the cheap is awesome. Can't go wrong with Swords of Plowshares.
I'd like to apologize to our wonderful editor, John, for going out of order because I skipped the Smothering Tide Award for Best Commander card in the set. This was not intentional, Commander fans. I just fat-fingered my scrolling on my computer. My answer is Swords to Plowshares. I can't imagine that card is bad in Commander at all. I know it is heavily played thanks to EDH Rec. And your answer?
I'm going to give it to Mana Vault.
Okay.
Obviously, Soul Ring's more powerful, more ubiquitous. There's a lot of things that I appreciate about Mana Vault from sort of an EDH perspective. One is it's something of the middle ground. Soul Ring, relatively accessible. It's been printed a million times.
A bazillion times.
You start going up to the Mana Crypts, Grim Monoliths of the world. You're starting to look at cards that are hundreds of dollars and are pretty hard to find. Mana Vault's sort of in the middle ground of certainly more expensive than Soul Ring, but not nearly as expensive as a lot of the other analogous cards.
Yep.
And then to the extent that it has drawbacks, the drawbacks actually kind of speak to Commander because you have more life to play with and the game is played at a slower pace such that taking a little bit of time to untap your monolith and then maybe do another big play is part of that experience as well.
Okay. All right. I dig it. We got the Chart Rumbler Award for weirdest card in the set. I am going back to Bronze Tablet, which has won an award previously. For those of you who don't know anything about the old Bronze Tablet, I will be very kind in reminding you that this stupid card that they felt the need to bring back is the following: 6-mana artifact. Remove Bronze Tablet from your deck if you're not playing for ante. Enters the battlefield tapped. 4 tap, exile Bronze Tablet, and target non-token permanent opponent owns. That player may pay 10 life if they do put Bronze Tablet into the owner's graveyard. Otherwise, that player owns Bronze Tablet and you own the other exiled card.
Yeah.
Just felt the need to do this again.
It's an anti card that doesn't clearly work even in ante.
Yep.
And doesn't actually have anything to do with ante. You're just stealing cards.
Pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much. Wins an award again. So congratulations, Bronze Tablet. Your answer is, do you remember?
I do not.
Smoke?
Oh, Smoke. Smoke is so weird. It's like extremely color bleeding and just like a funky red enchantment. Like what is going on here?
Red, no player may untap more than one creature during his or her untap step.
Like this is like the least red card of all time. And the mana cost is red.
It is extremely not red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smoke.
Not only is what Smoke does not red, but also I don't know what color Smoke's supposed to be, but I don't think it's red.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, well, smoke comes from fire usually, and fire is red. Okay,
okay,
yeah, but mechanically, it's like nonsense. I do know that a friend of mine used to play a game where it's basically like, I'm thinking of a magic card, and you have 10 guesses. You can ask me any question.
Yeah. Okay,
and he would always open on Smoke because no one could get Smoke.
Okay, yep. I know this game. Let's go to the Blank Award for the best card name in the set. A lot of good options here. You decided to go with Mahamodi Jin.
Oh, this is another great, like, it's expressive of the world while also not being something that you have to pay off. I love titles that sort of speak to a name, a place, maybe an old lord of some sort. There's some mystery there. But if you end up not ever referencing Mahamodi again, it's not like this card becomes less sweet.
This was one of my favorite cards growing up when I was a kid.
Banger.
I always was like, I used to play like blue red, and I was like, I really need one of these to be able to win any sort of game against my two friends. And then I remember when they came out with like new artwork for it.
Oh God.
And no.
Yeah.
Some things you don't change.
No. Yeah, the new art for Modi was like a.
We don't talk about it.
Yeah, who do I have to talk to about this? Who's responsible?
Some ideas leave on the floor. Yeah.
Awful.
My answer was Nightmare. Kind of a cool card and a cool name for a card. But like I said, there's a lot of really good options here as far as naming conventions are concerned. You could let us know your favorite in the comments on YouTube. See what I did there? Little engagement farming. Let's go to the John Avon Award for Best Land Artwork in the Set. For me, it is Oasis, not the band.
No.
Not the band. I don't know. It looks like an Oasis, which is a huge step in the right direction. And I don't know. I think it looks really cool. Now, Strip Mine, we're not in the 4 versions of Strip Mine anymore. That's great. It still looks like
whatever.
Yeah, rubbish. Mishra's Factory, we don't have like the different versions. We just kind of have I guess I want to say a normal one. I don't really know which one this is.
It's either, is that summer? I'm not sure.
I would defer to you. Here's what I know. It's not winter.
Yeah.
Which is the best
I think
one.
the Mishra's Factory art is one of those sort of rare pieces where it is way sweeter as a set of 4 than any one of the pieces individually.
That I agree with. And then your answer.
As long as it's available, I'm always going to give it to the Christopher Rush Path Forest. Just a beautiful piece of art. Captured me when I first started playing Magic, and every time I look at it, it's just still inspires a certain something in me.
And once again, as I say during these episodes, we do not have the Aurelius Fury Award for most overhyped card during previous season, nor do we have the Tarmogoyf Award for most underhyped card during previous season just yet, but coming soon. I can tell you that perhaps our next set does have a pre-release associated with it. So look forward to that. Which means, now that our awards are done, we have one thing left to do. Alrighty, partner. It's time to figure out what card won this set. Now, you have your answer. I don't know if you remember it or not.
Help me out.
It is a factory.
Oh, Mishra's Factory.
Yes.
Mishra's Factory, to me, conveys sort of the best of what's going on here, which is an appealing design that plays relatively well, that you could pretty much put into any deck to varying degree, but pretty easy to play pretty much anywhere. And something that, like, if you happen to hop on late, you weren't around when Antiquities came out, it might be very hard to get your hands on this card. It's certainly hard to get 3 or 4 copies of it. So in terms of what would you like to see out of a core set, and some level of let's reprint stuff that's fun, let's reprint stuff that for whatever reason is hard for people to access, let's reprint stuff that makes the world feel bigger with a name like Mishra's, like who's Mishra? All right, now I'm interested in who Mishra is. I think Mishra's Factory represents a lot of the best stuff that is going on in here that is different from revised unlimited beta and alpha.
So initially, my answer was going to be Man of All, but after having this conversation with you, I'm changing my answer. Now, Patrick does this wonderful thing where he takes a very game designer and positive approach to the show. And I like to sometimes bring in a little bit of a negative or what were they thinking approach. So my answer is Strip Mine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I think they got so much right here. And again, I wasn't playing during this time, so I can't say this. You can correct me if I'm wrong, of course. But like in the same way that, you know, the dual lands were looming over like what they could do and not do, it just feels like they corrected so much stuff and got so much stuff right. And they were just like, we're going to put this in here too. And
it's like so weird.
It's like, but why? Why did we have to put this in here? Because everyone's going to play it. 4 copies of it. It's going to just loom over these games the entire time and create a horrible experience. And you've done such a good job of like, hey, these cards that are too powerful, when we were first designing the game, the Moxes, like all the Power 9, Soul Ring, all the stuff you mentioned, they were like, you know what? We got to get away from this stuff. This is not what we want our game to be about. Okay. And then they were like, the dual lands, we got to get away from this because everyone's just going to play 4 copies. And if we put them in this set, then we're probably going to put them in future sets. We got to get away from this. And then they just put this humdinger in here. And it's like, you don't want to get away from this? Really? Like the Mana Vault thing, like the case you made earlier, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The Strip Mine, I would love to go back in time and just sit down and be like, why did you feel the need to keep this in here?
And it's not like 4th edition got rid of every quote unquote mistake from the early Magic sets. Like Swords of Plowshares is way too good, but it's not the worst if you're going to overshoot on something for it to be interaction. Mm-hmm. It's nice for to give cheap answers, particularly to newer players. So the experience is like, oh, you just played a Shivering Dragon and I'm just dead. So I just need to have a bunch of rares. Like Swords of Plowshares helps push up back against that.
Yep.
Dark Ritual is at this point, first of all, not as much combo stuff to do, just the cards don't exist yet.
Yeah, we really haven't even mentioned that. That card is in the set.
And also it's really evocative for black. And it makes a lot of sense if you're going to get rid of Black Lotus to say which color gets to do Black Lotus. Mm-hmm. And you correctly land on black. Good reasons to do that. This is one where I'm pretty good at arguing the other side of stuff, or like, here's what I could believe someone was thinking.
Yeah, you're actually really good at that.
This is one where I can't think of a plausible justification other than, I guess if some people have it, it's better if, in a perverse way, it's better if everyone has it.
Sure.
But that is straining.
It just stinks because like it just stands out in such a negative way that it's hard for me to believe that there was a better card. And when I say what card won the set, I normally lean on what I think of the best card is in the set from a competitive standpoint, or like what kind of guided things during that time. And it's hard to believe that it wasn't Strip Mine. So we're going to go ahead and give the set a grade, and I'm going to start. Mm-hmm. This is fun because neither of us gave it a grade in our pre-show. We said we were going to go through the show and then figure out what we want to do at the end. I'm giving this a 7.
Okay.
When I did the notes and everything, there was a part of me that was just like, Strip Mine and Mana Vault, what a bunch of idiots. Like, this is egregious. But now that I'm like looking at this, it's like, I'm not saying Mana Vault didn't have an impact. It probably did, but it's not like horrible, I guess I would say. Strip Mine, obviously, we've talked about that aplenty. I feel like they did a lot right.
Yeah.
That's the thing that kind of stands out to me after having this conversation with you, is it just feels like they got a lot right given the time, right? Like, obviously, you wouldn't print circles protections now. You wouldn't do tsunami and flash fires most likely. And some of these things that are incredibly powerful and I would argue unfun. But what I would say is that if we're looking through the lens of 1995, when this set came out, they pulled a lot of stuff out of it. They injected a lot of stuff into it that I felt like they needed to inject to be able to get those cards in the ecosystem and for players to have more fun. They made some changes that seems like they wanted to make for a very long time with the tap symbol and mana symbols and all that sort of stuff. The white border, black border kind of convoluted thing. I mean, that's an internal decision. Companies do stuff like that all the time that, like just don't make a ton of sense, really. And it's kind of constricting themselves. And they have like this kind of epiphany moment where it's like, why the hell are we doing this? And someone's like, I don't know. And they don't do it anymore. Okay, fine. I feel like they got a lot right. That's the long and the short of it. And core sets don't fly off the shelves, but I think this did a good job of serving its purpose of getting cards in the ecosystem. And if you were a newer player, I imagine this was a really good place to start.
Yeah, it was solid. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something that I recommended to my friends who were starting to play Magic after, I had gotten involved. And, once the set came out, I was like, yeah, 4th edition, good set to buy.
Okay.
I think this might be the first set that we've done where I'm giving it a lower grade than you.
I'm going to my scoreboard really quick.
I think everything is a tie, or my grade has been higher.
That Legends, I gave a 6 and you gave a 5.
Okay.
That's the only
right.
Only one.
So we got the second set.
All right, what you got?
I'm in 4th edition a 6.
Okay.
So what I appreciate about the set is I think there's a fair bit of wisdom overall in the cards that are reprinted, particularly the ones coming from the expansions and being added. By and large, a very, very good list. I very much appreciate we're going to be firm about the rarity stuff.
Okay.
I very much appreciate we're going to get rid of the dual lands. It's a tough one. We know that these things sell packs, but in the long term, we're way better off being able to make a lot of dual lands, and these things are inhibiting our ability to do that.
Okay.
2 big strikes, and they're really, really big strikes. One is strip mine.
Yeah.
Just strip mine and uncommon all over the place is like, it made playing at the local shop, it made playing among your friends much worse.
Okay.
The game was appreciably less fun when people had access to strip mine. The other big critique I have of the set is how bad the cycles are.
Okay. They are pretty bad.
I believe that if you took the wards, the circle protections, and the mana batteries and simply removed them from the set, not replace them with anything, just cut them, the set would be noticeably better from a like opening packs and building deck experience. It's like these cards, though I maybe I'm being a little heavy-handed on the wards. I think you kind of justify those up to a point, but those 15 cards represent like over 4% of the total file. It's not a small amount, and they're not particularly fun. In the case of the circles, they're actively extremely unfun.
Yep.
They really don't serve much of a purpose, and because there's other parts of this set that still have, you know, the flash fires, tsunami, death grip, you know, black cares about fighting on against green and white, and blue cares about fighting against green and red. You have that enemy color architecture. The wards and the circles are actually confusing through that lens. When you're trying to define mana as being a green ability, it actually is confusing to give 5 colored artifacts. It flattens out the color pie in a certain way. So I think, you know, the strip mine stuff, just from a pure how fun is Magic to play, is a extremely big strike.
Yep.
And those 15 cards, and just like, again, I would wager very heavily the set's just better cutting them. That's a lot of space in the set for somewhere between no purpose and negative purpose. And when really all the set is how are we editing this thing? What do we want the thing to look like?
Yeah.
No one's making you do anything. You're selecting the cards.
Yep.
So those 3 cycles really stand out to me as just being, they don't pass the smell test.
Yeah. No, I think that last point's really, really, really salient. Of no one's asking you to make new cards here.
Right.
Right. All the cards are done. You just have to figure out how to curate them into a set.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, in this hypothetical boardroom meeting that they have, and this is a thing for me. I always think about the hypothetical boardroom, what happened in there. Again, you know, it's just like on the whiteboard, circle protections, like it goes to a vote. Like, was it like a 7-6 vote, or was it like 13 yeses, 0 no's? Like, we don't know. We just know they're in the set.
Yeah.
And they got in there, and we don't know if people were yelling and screaming at each other about like, this is horrible gameplay. And other people were like, it's totally fine. This is why it's color identity. We got to do it.
I very much doubt it was that passionate of an argument.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like the mana batteries were cards that people really played with commonly, and it's like, let's get more of these in the ecosystem because they play well, whatever. They were just sort of a forgotten about cycle from Legends, which was a huge set.
Sure.
Someone had to just be like, yeah, mana batteries, why not?
The mana batteries so much feel to me like it feels like the 121 thing, where it's just like, we got to get some rares in here. How can we do that? And it's like, I don't know, make the mana batteries rare. All right, done.
Yeah.
You know, let's move on to the next topic. Like, that's because I know you've been in enough meetings like that. This feels like it's like 3 minutes before lunch. Mana batteries in. All right, let's go to lunch.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like no one else thinks about it, and you're not going to bring it up again either, because it's not really worth it to argue about. It's just kind of like, I don't know, we got more of the file done, you know?
And I you know, I know some of this is a very me specific thing. I have been told that one of my, you know, sort of superpowers as a game designer is the file is 200 cards. Oh, we only have an art budget for 180 cards. We have to cut 20 cards. What 20 cards are we cutting?
Yeah.
I'm very good at cutting the worst 10% of a set.
Okay.
I've been told that I have a very good eye for what the worst 10% is.
Okay.
So this stuff really sticks out to me as just when I feel like there's a considerable chunk of the set where the set would just be improved by them leaving with no replacement.
Sure.
It's very hard for me to get past that. And so
Gotcha.
I have to give 4th edition a pretty modest grade, even though there is a lot to like. And there is some noticeable wisdom there, and the architecture is really sound in a lot of places. But 5% of the set on that stuff is just that's smells bad.
Well,
stinks.
I'm shutting this laptop now because this episode is basically done. But whenever we leave an episode, we got to tell you what the next episode is going to be. And in the same way that we already have our 4th edition packs for our Crack-A-Pack, boom. We got our Ice Age packs already for our Crack-A-Pack. First of all, these boosters are beautiful.
They are.
Because this is one of my favorite shades of blue, if you couldn't tell by the hair. And I'm not saying I did my hair in honor of Ice Age, but I'm not saying that either. Let me tell you a little something here, folks. This set is huge.
Oh, yeah. Oh, settle in.
And it took me so long. And I had to read so many things to get ready for the recording of this next episode, which is clearly going to be Ice Age. They went for it, man. They went for it with this set. And there's a lot of good and there's some bad too, which, that's what you would expect. But man, did they go for it. I can't wait to hear what your experience was with this set, like coming out, playing with it, everything. Because I can't remember this perfectly, but I'm pretty sure that Ice Age is the first booster pack that my dad ever bought me.
In some ways, I consider Ice Age to be really like the first complete Magic expansion, insofar as every set is really oriented around either here's the world that we're in, or here are the new mechanics. And Ice Age feels to me like the first set where there's an intersection.
Okay.
Where the world informs the cards and the cards inform the world. Whereas before, the sets were either very siloed or it was all one thing or the other. So there's a lot of ugliness in here too.
Yeah.
But really influential set. Cards I played with a ton.
Look at that banger on that pack.
First card that I was ever able to consistently beat Eugene Harvey with is in this set.
Really?
Yes.
Is it this old fella right here?
No.
This is Scaled Worm, by the way. If memory serves, 8 mana, 7/6, no text.
That sounds right.
I think
maybe 7. Might have been 7.
I'm almost positive it's 7 in a green.
Okay.
7/6. I used to love this card, so I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited to bring that to you. This episode, Ice Age to you, folks. Very, very soon. But on our way out the door, of course, if you are not already subscribed to the page, you can always subscribe, share anything that you find here on the Resleevables YouTube page. We appreciate it very, very much. You can, of course, always follow us over on the old Twitter, so you can see when new episodes are coming out, new episodes of our podcast, Unsleeved, which transitions us nicely into our Patreon, which is patreon.com/theresleevables, where you will get episodes of the Resleevables earlier than everyone on YouTube. You will also get episodes to our Patreon exclusive podcast, Unsleeved. You'll get access to being able to win the Crack-A-Pack because we give one of these away, of course, or in the instance of Fallen Empires,
59.
we give away 59 packs of Fallen Empires, which hopefully by the time you're watching this, you've received in the mail by now. We're having a blast, and we have all of you to thank for that. So thank you for the likes, the subscribes, the follows, the tweets, the patronage. For our Jackal Pups out there, you guys all rock. And until next time, he's Patrick Sullivan. I'm Cedric Phillips. We hope you enjoyed 4th edition. Ice Age coming up next. Get this beauty ready. Got my blue hair. Hope people make fun of me. You just no-sold the blue hair yesterday. That was great. It was really well done. Didn't make a single mention the entire time.
Do you want to know why?
Yeah, go for it.
I could not remember if it was the first time that I'd seen you with blue hair.
First time in my life.
Okay.
First time.
I didn't want to be like, oh, new thing, and you're like, oh, I've had it for 2 weeks or whatever. that was actually the thing.
I got it done that day.
Yeah, I just couldn't. I wasn't sure.
Okay.
And yeah, it seemed like low upside, potentially pretty low floor. So I just decided not to say anything.
Well done. Really well done.
Choi. 4th edition. Take 1 of 1.
Probably be 2 takes.
No, I won't.
Hopefully 1 of 1. All right.
Call me the One Ring.
Yeah.
This is a 1 of 1.
This is a 1 of 1 take. All right.